Welcome back, everyone. Let's go and take a look at the iPhone 12 Pro and compare it against the iPhone XS in 2022 and see which one is the better deal for you. Now, if you want to pick up either one of these phones, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, side by side, there are definitely some differences between these two devices. The iPhone XS came out in 2018, and it was the flagship of that time. It was only the smaller model, but it was still the $1,000 phone of that time. This thing had a 5.8-inch Retina OLED display on the front, and it's a pretty good panel. This one I think is an aftermarket display, but it's still a very good screen. I've had very good times with this type of panel, and out of everything within this phone, the screen of this thing is the one thing I can't complain about. And I will say, in iOS 16 era that we are on right now, this phone has actually improved quite a bit in terms of just the fluidity and everything like that. So that is one thing to keep in mind. On the iPhone 12 Pro, on the other hand, we have, this was the 2020 flagship. Now, this phone was a little bit different. This phone had a lot of capability. It just kind of was weird in a few different areas, but the panel is 6.1 inches. So it's a bigger panel on this phone. It's a better panel overall, too. No promotion or anything, but it is still a very sharp, nice looking display. And Apple makes really good panels with Samsung. I think Samsung made this one too. They made both of them, but this one was a really good panel. Same size notch, but we do get the flat sides on the iPhone 12 Pro. So this is a pretty big deal. I think I like this a lot more than having the curved side, but there still are advantages of curved sides. Like with the flat one, it makes the phone feel a little bit thicker, but it makes the phone feel like it's a slab of gold or something. Like that phone feels so good in the hand. The XS still feels really good too, but personally I think the 12 Pro just feels like still like $1,000 phone, which is so crazy. Now on the back, we do have a triple camera setup on the iPhone 12 Pro, but we have a dual camera setup on the iPhone XS, and both are good phones. Like I said, you're definitely getting a better phone and a better camera on the 12 Pro, but how much better? That's kind of the thing. I think for the XS, for it being much cheaper, that is one thing to keep in mind. Frosted glass back on the iPhone 12 Pro, though, we have that standard glass back. Now this is the skin, but standard glass back right below that. And like I said before, you're definitely getting a much better phone for the future on something like an iPhone 12 Pro than on something like the iPhone XS. And both these phones kind of have the same issues, which is kind of funny. This was the $1,000 phone in 2020, and this was the $1,000 phone in 2018. And I think they both still kind of showcase a lot of what they kind of brought internally, and the 12 Pro more so what it brought on the outside, just by bringing that flat side back or the flat sides and all that other stuff with this phone. Now, in terms of software and longevity, this is the big thing to keep in mind. The XS is still supported with software, but it's probably not going to last as long as something like the iPhone 12 Pro. So personally, that is probably one of the bigger things to keep in mind. As I've always mentioned though, you don't want to go and buy a phone and already have it outdated. I have a feeling the iPhone XS is going to be supported for quite a bit of time, so it's not like tomorrow this thing's going to be outdated. So that's probably one thing to keep in mind, but still, I feel like something like the iPhone 12 Pro is still going to, the XS is still going to be here. You're not going to feel like you're missing out on anything, and this is still a very capable phone. So in terms of that, that covers it up there as well. Now let's go into a speed comparison between both these phones. The iPhone XS has that Apple A12 Bionic chip inside of it with 4 gigabytes of RAM, where the iPhone 12 Pro has that Apple A14 Bionic chip inside of it with 6 gigabytes of RAM. So let's go and see which one's the faster one between both of these. Okay, there we go. All the apps are clear on the background. As you guys can see, XS is here, 12 Pro is here. Let me scroll over to the side. Let's get into a phone calls 3, 2, 1. Okay, 12 Pro definitely faster. Music 3, 2, 1. Okay, I don't know why the 12 Pro. Okay, so these were on different panels, so that's probably why. App Store 3, 2, 1. Yep, 12 Pro definitely far faster here. iPhone XS a little bit behind, clicking into here. 12 Pro again is a faster one. Let's go and hop out of this one. Let's go and kind of scroll through here. And scrolling wise, they're kind of the same, but definitely the 12 Pro was the faster one there. Let's go and get into Mail 3, 2, 1. Okay, 12 Pro again is faster. Clock 3, 2, 1. About the same thing. Hopping out of here, let's go and get into Photos 3, 2, 1. Okay, kind of too many different pop-ups. I don't really know what to do with that one. Camera 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go and get into a photo. Let's go and open up the photo. And you can even see something like opening up a photo was a little bit faster on the iPhone 12 Pro, and that's going to trickle down to everything else you're going to do with the devices. I want to get into the settings app 3, 2, 1. Even on something like settings is faster on the iPhone 12 Pro, which is pretty insane. Now we do have a bunch of these third-party applications we can go and test out. Snapchat 3, 2, 1. Okay, I was logged into an account here, but it was logged out at the same time. Let's go and try. I don't know where all these other apps are. Temple Run 2, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so tons of different pop-ups that came up. The 12 Pro still loaded up faster even though it had more pop-ups, which is very weird. and you can see the 10s was a little bit behind. The 12 Pro kind of stuttered a little bit here in 2, but the 10s seemed to be smoother, but it loaded up later, so it's kind of one thing to keep in mind. Hopping out of this one, I'm not too sure where all the other apps on my iPhone 10 or 12 Pro are, which is very strange. We can try something like Spotify, which I do not have here. We can load into this one. Let's go ahead and do calculator 321. Okay, kind of the same thing, compass 321. Let's go get into voice memos 321. Okay. So we're getting a really interesting thing, which in my opinion is not interesting at all. It's quite obvious in my opinion that something like the iPhone 12 Pro is the faster phone in pretty much every single area. So I do think if you're getting a phone, you're definitely going to be getting a faster one on the iPhone 12 Pro. You're also getting more RAM on this device as well. So if you're somebody who really cares about having the most amount of RAM or having the most fastest phone of that time, the 12 Pro is the faster one. The 10 is pretty smooth and was still pretty fast, but I think the 12 Pro was consistently the faster one when it came down to it. So in terms of the speed, that kind of covers it up there. Now, in terms of the actual cameras on the back, this is a very interesting thing because there's 2 years of difference between these two, but there's a pretty big difference with the cameras. So it's a dual camera versus a triple camera. We have 4K at 60 on the back. We only have 1080p on the front of the 10s, but we have 4K at 60 on the front of the 12 Pro. You do have that additional LiDAR sensor on the 12 Pro as well, which is still pretty cool. On the 10s though, wide and ultra wide sensor, which I think is still a good camera. Like that's still a pretty decent lens, or sorry, wide and telephoto lens. So there's no ultra wide here. Now, when you actually go ahead and take photos and everything, this is still, like I said before, it's a pretty capable camera. This is not going to be a camera that you go and pick up today, and you're going to compare it against the iPhone 13 or the soon to be released 14s and still feel like you have the greatest flagship. But I think this is still a very capable lens. Like we still have the ability of zooming in 10 times into a photo, which is amazing. We don't have the ability of zooming out, which is kind of unfortunate, but we still have things like portrait mode, panorama mode, slow mode, all this other stuff. So you still have a very capable phone here, and I don't think this is a bad phone in terms of camera. I do kind of wish we had 4K at 60 on the front, but we have 1080p at 60 on the front. So that's still probably more than enough for a lot of people. But with something like the iPhone 12 Pro on the other hand, this is definitely the more of a flagship. This is definitely still a very capable camera that's probably going to kind of keep up with even the iPhone 14 Pros that are going to be coming out as well. Now with this phone, we do have the additional ultra-wide sensor. So not only do we have the ability of zooming in 10 times, like the 10x zoom, but we have the ability of doing a 0.5x zoom, which is the ultra-wide lens, which is really cool. And as I mentioned before, having that type of capability is awesome. But we also have portrait mode. We do have standard video mode. We don't have cinematic mode on either one of these, which is that new Apple thing that they just made. But I do think when it comes down to it, the iPhone 12 Pro is probably the better camera. For sure, this is the better one when it comes down to it. And I'm a fan of this, camera for sure. I used this phone for a year. I had a great time with the camera. And honestly, if I would kind of sum up this whole entire video, I would kind of say that the iPhone 12 Pro is the better one in every single area. And if you have the money, going from a 10s to a 12 Pro, it's a pretty good upgrade. Like you're getting a much better phone in every single area. This thing is pretty much future-proofed in so many different ways, and this is a very good phone. The 10s, I think, is still a tremendous phone too. I think it still has a lot to the table. But there is another phone that we're not really thinking about right now, which is the iPhone 11 Pro, which sits right in the middle of these two. And the 11 Pro is a great middle ground. If you don't want to go for a 12 Pro if it's too expensive, buying an 11 Pro is still a very good phone. And you're getting pretty much the same. It's like both these phones combined, that kind of gives you the iPhone 11 Pro. So that's kind of how I would break it down. Both these phones are great, but if you want to save even more money than the 12 Pro, go for the 11 Pro. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.